So hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today. Today it's COVID, tomorrow, who knows? I'm Tracy Fritcher with ServiceNow. I'm a principal strategist in our employee experience business, and I'm so happy all of you are with us today. We have a great agenda, and we're so lucky that we have an awesome customer with us, the American Red Cross. So Carol and her team will be here to really talk about everything that they have done, really in the last year, and to share their stories about how they are helping so many people during a time when so many people have needed help. So be ready for a great story. We're also here with The Anti, and we're so grateful that The Anti has pulled this session together. They are a fabulous partner in the ServiceNow space, and I will soon be kicking it off by turning it over to Wayne Chataway and have Wayne introduce himself, and also then bring in the Red Cross to actually share their story and do some question and answer as well. But before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items today. So you will be able to ask questions during this presentation, and we encourage you to do so. There's a lot of great parts of the story that might resonate for you and you might want a little bit more information on. So go ahead and put your questions in. You'll have two chances to have your questions answered right after the team from American Red Cross finishes with their presentation and telling their story. And then also we will do a Q&A at the very end and bring in various people as they have answers to some of the questions. The other thing is at the end of today's session, you'll get three things. Number one, you'll get a recording of the webinar. And secondly, you will get the presentation. So you will have all of these slides. And then thirdly, you'll have a chance to get your 2-hour complimentary session with the consultants and the leads from The Anti as you look at how you might design your employee experience and really service your employees and unleash them to do the most. So there'll be information about that so that you can partake in that. And then lastly, at the very end of this session, I'll be able to announce who won the Apple AirPods Pro, which is really cool. And I wish I could win them because I don't have them, but so someone will win those today, and we're really excited about that. So as we move into the agenda, I just wanted to say, as I have this lovely team here to join me, so Carol, Jill, and Tori from the American Red Cross will be speaking and sharing their stories. They'll do a brief introduction when they start talking. And I will also, like I said, introduce Wayne, my friend and our colleague and our amazing partner. But before that, from a ServiceNow perspective, just a minute around our purpose. And the purpose that we have is we make the world of work better for people. And people is actually the most important part of that statement, if you will, of our purpose. And yes, we're a technology company, but really we are all about helping organizations serve their people and therefore serve their customers. And actually right now with all that we're doing around COVID-19 vaccinations and helping employees and organizations stay safe, we're really serving the world, if you will. And we've done that by putting ourselves in the shoes of the people who are on the front lines, doing what they need to do, keeping businesses running. So it's really kind of unleashing empathy at scale. And empathy is definitely a business imperative for the 21st century. And we are all about enabling our organizations to do that. And when you start there with this people first approach, you are unleashing business success in the way forward. So thanks again for joining us. Let's dive in. I want to bring in my, like I said, my friend and colleague, Wayne Chataway, who is not only a great thought leader in this area and the founder and the CEO of The Anti, who does so much amazing work in this space, but he also has a really unique and very, very cool connection to the Red Cross. So Wayne, help us start off today and bring us in with helping the Red Cross share their story.
Great. Well, it's certainly been a long time since that pick was taken. Clearly, my journey with the Red Cross started decades ago, clearly by the 80s haircut. So the mullet was in back then, so I can't pull that off anymore. So I was a member of the American Red Cross Volunteer Life-Saving Corps in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Started in 1985 as just a 15-year-old. So that's when I began my service with the Red Cross. You can see the historic building back there. Basically, our mission in life, much like the Red Cross, was to save lives. So these buildings were actually put all across the world back in the when people started going to the beach in the late 1900s. And really the Jacksonville Beach one that sits there still today is the last remaining one. So it's definitely the last of its kind. So we saved lives, did first aid to beachgoers, logged thousands and thousands of hours. And as I grew up and got less out of shape for lifeguarding, I also was involved with Andrew and Hugo in those relief efforts. So think about it in 2019 when I saw the Red Cross come across my desk as an opportunity. I got super, super excited to be able to help them in some way. And it's hard to get your mind around 2019, but 2019 was just sort of normal, as normal can be. We love our clients that we had clients that did sells flights and cars and labels and mortgages and surgeries. But to be able to help the Red Cross that had spent so much time, what a huge opportunity. We didn't know how big the opportunity was as 2020 hit. To be able to help the Red Cross during COVID even made it extra special. So really here to tell the story because you want to hear from them a whole lot more about their story and less from me. I've got a great team from the Red Cross. So I've got Carol, who is the HR leader from the Red Cross on the line that I'm going to pass the gavel over to, I guess, virtual gavel, Carol. And she's got her team of Jill and Tori that I'm sure have lots to say. So super excited. Definitely listen up because this is extremely relevant to all of us today. So it's all you, Carol.
All right. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for the great intro and loved the mullet. So, but we like to say everybody has a Red Cross story, and if you don't have one now, you may have one in the future. But just most people know the Red Cross, but oftentimes people don't know the Red Cross except through the lens with which you may have encountered us. And so this is just a really brief recap. You can see our mission right up there, front and center, and I think the important thing is that we're there to help alleviate human suffering, but we have not only employees, amazing 18,000 employees, but also we really harness the power of our volunteers and of course the generosity of the American public. And that's what, makes us viable there. And you can see down on the lower left, 18,000 employees. We have about 180,000 volunteers, but during times of disaster, that can swell up to 300, 400,000. And those would be our situational or episodic volunteers that come to help us during times of, extreme disasters or large scale disasters. And then over in the bottom right, you can see on the slide, those are some of the areas and sort of some metrics or stats that you can see that we do. I think it's important to understand we have a variety of mission services. We have our humanitarian mission. Many of you, that's when you see the trucks on the newscast if we're responding to a disaster and going into a hurricane or a tornado or a flood zone. This past year in 2020, wildfire season was incredible and very dangerous and very widespread. So we had another record-breaking disaster year, which we seem to be saying every year. And every year, we break more records with that. Wayne indicated we also have training services. So those are our classes, CPR, lifeguarding, and of course, our largest business or area is biomedical services. So that's our blood. We supply 40% of the nation's blood supply, and relevant specifically to COVID over this past year as we are providing convalescent plasma from folks who have had COVID, and they're able to then donate their blood to help patients that are in the hospital recover more quickly. So we're very excited and proud to be able to offer that service to the American public. And of course, we support our military as well through our services to the armed forces. And we have a small international division. We operate in every state and territory, and we do have Red Cross members at military bases across the United States. So I head up, just about a little bit about me. I head up the HR operations area of the Red Cross. I've been here about 10 years. And it's relevant to our story today is that I was the project sponsor and lead for our HR transformation effort. So let me go ahead and switch it just so my other team members can introduce themselves because we'll be sharing sort of our story here in just a second. Jill, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jill Siegel, and I'm the Director of HR Compliance and Policy for HR Operations. So I'm part of Carol's team. I've been with the Red Cross about 15 years. And one of the key reasons that I'm here to talk to our journey today is that I was a core member of the transformation project that you're going to hear more about in just a little while.
And Tori? Oh, I think you're on mute. Yep, can't hear Tori. I'll go ahead and introduce her for you and she can work on connecting. So Tori was key to this project because she stood up our new advice and counsel unit, which we'll be talking about a little bit in the Our Story area and what our transformation had to do. So Tori, are you there? Nope, I think she's still working on it. So
Can you hear me?
yes, there you go.
My headphones didn't work. I wasn't listening to you, Carol, so quickly. Tori Velasquez, as I think you mentioned, I'm the Director of HR Advice and Counsel. I've been with the Red Cross for about 7 years, and I'm here to talk to you today about the COVID journey and the HR response to COVID that we implemented at the Red Cross.
Great. Thanks, Tori. So I'll just start off with a little framing and then I'll turn it over to Jill, which we'll talk about more detail. So the story we have is really the completion. We just completed what ended up being a 2-year journey. We called it HR transformation. And that was including, of course, bringing on, not only changing our HR model, but bringing on technology, ServiceNow technology, and working with the Anti group to get it implemented to be able to realize our HR transformation. And so our challenge was to be able to transform HR to really be more available, more just-in-time access to HR to all of our employees. And we also had a pretty significant financial goal of making sure we realized at least a 13% savings over our previous year's budget. So we had started the journey about 2 years ago, researching and doing all the things you do on a big journey, talking to lots of other folks who maybe had been through this and then seeing how that might apply to the Red Cross. And in our, just real quickly about our old model, we operated in a somewhat traditional HR model. We have COEs, total rewards, talent acquisition, et cetera. We had a very small HR shared services area. We had our tier 1 HR service center outsourced. So we were not providing those services in-house. And we had a very limited case management system. It was really just for internal HR shared services primarily. So we really didn't have any experience. We had no employee portal, no way for really employees to access our services except for, email or calling somebody up. Our HR business partner function was very region. It was assigned to each region, et cetera. So we had this sort of model. We had to say, how do we really focus on service and use technology to the benefit? So I'll turn it over to Jill and she can walk us through sort of how we transformed ourselves and where we are today.
Okay, thanks, Carol. So you can see there's a timeline on this slide, and I wanted to say that, as Carol said, our journey really began well before that February of 2020 timeline, even though our implementation started a month before COVID hit, and of course COVID threw a big curveball into all of our plans. We really started the journey about 2 years prior to that. So we started with our RFP for our technology, and as you probably have gathered, we ended up with ServiceNow. We've been very pleased with ServiceNow and Anti, our implementation partner. We started with things like making sure that we had our design workshops and that we knew what we wanted our model to look like. We knew what we wanted our major processes to look like. And that actually went on probably from March to December of 2019. And in the midst of all of that, we were doing our RFP for our new technology. And then when we really kicked off in February, that's when our implementation started. And of course, COVID hit in March. And so Tori's going to speak to the COVID impacts to our timeline. But one of the things that I'm really proud of is the fact that we were due to go live in November and we hit that out of the park despite COVID. And I can say that I think, and again, Tori will talk to the specifics, but I can say that had we not been as far along on the HR transformation journey as we had been, I think our COVID response and our ability to support our workforce through COVID would have looked very different. And so I really credit our HR transformation journey with preparing us, even though we didn't know it, to deal with the COVID impacts. So you can see on the slide some of the key points about our new model as we transformed through HR transformation. We did, of course, implement ServiceNow as our HR delivery platform. We changed to a tiered service structure. We brought our tier 1 service center back in-house. We did leave our benefits and our payroll outsourced. We created, what we did with our HR business partners is, as Carol said, they were sort of the face of HR to our business, to our clients, and they were, as I like to say, the Jacks and Jills of all trades, and they handled everything both transactional and strategic. They were really sort of the go-between as well to all of HR. And so we tried with our new model to put the work where it belonged with our tiered model. And so we ended up with 2 buckets, if you will, of our HR business partners. One is the advice and counsel team, and that's the team that Tori heads up. And the point of the advice and counsel team is to be consultative with specific areas of focus and specific expertise in employee relations and labor relations and consulting for performance issues, coaching, and really raising the bar on our manager effectiveness. And so that was one of the big goals of standing up a dedicated advice and counsel team. And we're going to talk to metrics in a little while, and you'll see how successful we've been with that. The other bucket for our HR business partners was our strategic client partners, and they really have a strategic focus, and they work with our vice presidents and above on strategic business planning. And so that's really where we are. We're 11 weeks in to our go live. You can also see that some of the other key pieces with our transformation is we did achieve, as Carol said, our 13% budget reduction. Our staff actually didn't drop all that much, so we were able to implement, be more efficient and more effective. And as we say, we want to be good stewards of our donor dollars because we are a nonprofit and we are the Red Cross, and you know the where we get our money is from the American people. So we're very conscious of making sure that we provide first-class service to our clients. And for HR, that of course usually means our internal clients, but also to be cost effective as well. So I think transformation really hit those marks for us. I'll give you one key, one sort of anecdotal piece before I turn it over to Tori to talk specifically about COVID. One of the key things we wanted to do as part of HR transformation is we wanted to centralize our labor relations. And this was very tricky. We couldn't find very many companies out there who had gone through HR transformation and went to a tiered service delivery model that had centralized labor relations. So, you know, we were not, as Carol liked to say, we were not only cutting edge, but in this area, we were a little bit of bleeding edge. And so when she said that, that made me a little nervous as we worked through this. But I think we were able to successfully centralize our labor relations. Specifically, one of our key successes was centralizing our grievance process. We stood up a very a customized service through the ServiceNow platform. We have 80 plus collective bargaining agreements, and 80. So what that means is, for those of you that don't operate in a union environment, so we have to consider more than 80 different, I guess, grievance models for our local grievances in relation to those 80 collective bargaining agreements. So what we tried to do is we wanted to be able to track our grievances, we wanted to know the scope of our grievances, and we wanted our business partners, meaning non-HR, to be more involved in supporting grievance resolution. And so to achieve all of those things, we stood up a task force with not only HR, but also key business representatives. And we were able to create a customized service that with all the bells and whistles, it's one of the Anti, our configuration partner, really knocked it out of the park on this one. We have a behind the scenes table that essentially fires specific tasks for every collective bargaining agreement, for due dates, for the responses, for when the next steps need to be filed by the union, et cetera. So it really keeps everybody accountable. It allows for centralized reporting. It links to specific resources that the business might need. And so it really met all of our needs. And we're really, I think that's one of the services, which is the ways that we support the business through ServiceNow, that we're the most proud of, is the fact that we were able to stand up this grievance service, and we're getting adoption of the grievance service. And so that's just one of a success story about how we were able to centralize our labor relations. So that is one of our 70 services. So at Go Live, if you can see on that slide, we had 1,000 knowledge articles. And one of the keys to success of this model was the fact that we drove the business to our clients to be able to have direct access to information when they needed it. And we were told that having knowledge articles for people to access information at their fingertips through a Google-like search was going to be really important. So we spent a lot of time loading our knowledge articles and creating them. We had 1,000 of them at Go Live. 800 of them were external, meaning client facing. We created 70 HR services. Grievances was one of them. We also created an onboarding life cycle, which is, we centralized our onboarding process and created some tasks so that there was consistency in how our employees were onboarded across the organization, which we quite frankly didn't have before. And we have 18 unique HR assignment groups that are assigned different cases in our, we're calling it our HR Now platform. So I know that I've kind of compressed 2 years of HR transformation into about 10 minutes, but it was truly an exciting time. It was a hold on to your seats. It was just an enormous success. And you know, we're going to talk a little bit more about why it was a success, some of our lessons learned here in a little bit. But of course, in March, in the middle of our transformation journey, just as things were becoming heated, and you know, we were just getting ready to move full stride into the all-consuming implementation, COVID hit. And so Tori's going to talk about how we were impacted by COVID and how we were able to successfully leverage ServiceNow and our consultants, the Anti, to help us meet the needs of the organization. So Tori, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jill. And hi again, Tori Velasquez. And I guess I would describe myself as the lucky individual that raised my hand to say, let me be part of this COVID response. How can I help? And so to paint a picture of what happened at the beginning, if you think back to early March, the Red Cross had been tracking some HR COVID cases through our leave of absence team. So maybe you traveled, maybe you needed time off work. So we were tracking some cases. But at the beginning of March, when COVID became all consuming, we made the decision to track everything. We wanted to understand how COVID was impacting our workforce, and the natural group to do that rested with HR, because, you know, it's employee health we're talking about. It's, you know, sensitive issues, confidential issues. So HR began that journey. Because it was such a focus for us, we were allowed to release some folks from their day job to focus primarily on COVID-19. So I think it was around the second week of March, we were at the beginning of the week talking about how we were going to handle this in absence of any sort of technology platform. And we created 2 email boxes, literally an email. One was for COVID questions. So HR COVID questions at redcross.org. And we launched that on a Thursday, I don't remember the date. And we didn't know it. We just said, okay, let's just open it up and see what happens. So our clients had a COVID question and they would email the inbox. Friday, the day after, we launched HR Exposure at redcross.org, and people started sending in emails to document whatever was happening. And we tracked everything. So if you were exposed to COVID, if you were positive for COVID, if you thought you might be positive for COVID, if you were high risk and afraid to come into the workplace, or schools had shut down right around that time, and if your kids were at home and you couldn't get to work, what were you going to do? So we started tracking everything. And I can remember that first weekend, we did this on an Excel spreadsheet. That was our method of tracking this information. And on Saturday, I took a look at the counts of emails that were coming in, and by the afternoon, they just wouldn't stop. It was just going up and up and up. And in panic mode, I called a bunch of employees to come in and get working on the Excel tracker. And you could go in that tracker and see all of the people and their little boxes and their names, entering information for our employees, and sometimes making the mistake of going to the wrong line. And so luckily that solution only lasted for about 2 weeks. We did partner with our IT team to create an in-house sort of database, dashboard type thing. And that took us through probably until we partnered with The Anti to get our COVID portal up through ServiceNow. So our trends really mirrored the way the US was going. I think in March, I remember it was March 26th, because this is a time I'll never forget. We had 252 new cases, new COVID cases coming into our dashboard. So that doesn't include the follow-up emails, the back and forth questions, can you give me more information type emails. So you can imagine that it was a full-time job for 2 people on my team to just watch the email inbox and figure out, where does the reply go? How do I find who originally was managing this case and make sure that reply email gets to that person? So I'll spare you that detail, more of that detail, but that's really how we were operating. We saw our first break in volume around Easter Sunday, and that was the first time we had a breather. We could take a step back, look at what we needed to do next, because COVID just wasn't going away, and do some audit, some cleanup, etc. And it was at that point that I started to understand a little bit more about The Anti, our partner, and how we were going to work with them to launch the COVID-19 portal, which really was ServiceNow, not in the way that we were going to utilize it in November on our actual go live date, but in the beginning. So that summer we worked on all of the requirements. The great news is that The Anti was basically able to take what we currently had and replicate that in ServiceNow. So it wasn't much of a training, wasn't too much training. People could catch on quickly. It was very intuitive. And our HR case agents that were working these cases, it just became better and better and more effective. So we launched that in August. And I remember that being very, very seamless, because we didn't have to deal with a lot of change management. HR was already working in a centralized model. They were accustomed to just answering what came their way, even if it wasn't their assigned client, which is how we lived forever at the Red Cross in HR. And the business knew it too. And if anything, they were relieved to have such a friendly portal to be able to work with. Very intuitive. Here's how you put in the information. I don't have to type an email, etc. So the launch, from my perspective, was just enhancing all of our work that we've done. And it was at that point that we could really focus on continuous improvement. So we had things like a root cause checklist. If you're exposed at work, how do you figure out how that happened? How can we give insight back to the business to say, in this area, here's what happened. Let's put in some measures to make sure it doesn't happen again. So that was a paper checklist. Once we went live, the Anti was able to turn their attention back to COVID and instantly automate that checklist and put it into ServiceNow. I can remember that the business wanted to put all these instructions on how to access it. And I said, no, just go on the portal, start using the case. It will pop up and it'll be very friendly, and they can figure out how to answer that checklist, how to say, here's what really happened during that that exposure in the workplace, and it'll be super easy. OSHA has become a big part of our compliance world. And so what did the OSHA team need? Partnering with them to understand what they needed for reporting, what fields they needed to see, how they could access that information. Our medical directors on the biomedical side, who really partnered with us to help us understand, why do you have to quarantine, in what situation, et cetera. You know, they needed to review every case every day to make sure that nobody that was affected by COVID was in the workplace. So how do we do that? And ServiceNow was able to provide them exactly what they needed in a report, emailed to their group every single day without asking for it. You know, it just showed up. So it really just made everything way more effective. And then now we're at the point where we are turning our attention to vaccine tracking, and we are asking people to report in when they get a vaccine. It's completely confidential, it's completely voluntary, but we just want to understand as an organization what percentage of our workforce has been vaccinated. So, you know, our case agents are working those cases as well. So, you know, as I reflect back on that time from the Excel spreadsheet to today, I mentioned that it was just an outstanding display of everybody at the Red Cross and with our anti-partners to come together, quickly deliver exactly what we needed for our business. I know that ServiceNow also does provide COVID services, but you know, we had to go the custom route because of all the complexity in our business. And it's kind of odd to use the word outstanding when you're telling a COVID-19 story, but it truly was. It was a real reflection of the dedication of everybody and really wanting to take the best care of our employees, which is why it continues to be a success. And going forward, we are going to do this work until, you know, COVID hopefully goes away. And so who knows what's to come, but that's definitely, you know, where we were. And it's been a long journey, but it's been a good journey partnering with all of these individuals. So thank you.
So let me share my video again, and I'll pick it up from here, Tori. So I wanted to point out that, as Tori said, the transition to standing up our COVID portal was really seamless. And honestly, it was sort of a preview for our go live with our robust all bells and whistles portal, fully transformative HR model in November. And I really think it helped with our change management, both for our HR staff that got used to working in our new case management system, and also for the business that got used to submitting questions and working cases with HR in the way that they did. So I think it was really effective for our change management. And so when we went live with HR transformation in mid-November, November 16th, 11 and a half weeks ago, to be exact, it was a non-event. It was very seamless. It was a blip on the radar. It was incredibly just smooth, is the only way that I can describe it. I know there's a question in the Q&A, and if you don't mind, I think we'll defer that to the Q&A section at the end, part of the end, if that's all right. So if we'll advance to the next slide, I did say that we would share some metrics with you, and I'm not gonna go through all of these one by one, but I wanted to capture or sort of call out some of the headlines that I see when I look at these metrics. So we're only 11 and a half weeks into our go live, but one of the things that jumps out off the page here is the source, the overall source. If you look on the left-hand side of of how people are reaching HR, is via self-service is at 40%. And to me, that's an absolutely amazing number. And what that tells us is people are using our portal, and they're using it to submit cases to HR through self-service. And that was one of our goals of HR transformation, is to put information and at people's fingertips to make them to drive the direct access, if you will. So rather than the traditional pick up the phone and call HR or send an email, they're really embracing self-service. The other piece that they're embracing is our live chat feature. That's been incredibly popular. You know, in the society in which we live, we're used to instant gratification, if you will, or instant answers. And so people love our live chat. They love to live chat with our tier one. As you can see, there's 43% of our tier one cases come in through chat, which is another headline that I see when I look at this left side. The other thing that jumps out at me is the advice and counsel, which is in the middle. You can see that 55% of our advice and counsel cases are true consulting cases. And so that also tells me that our model has been a success, because what we wanted to do is we wanted to take all of the transactional items that our HR business partners in the field were doing prior to our transformation and put them where they belonged. In other words, move them to tier one, move them to shared services, move them to payroll, et cetera, move them to those specialty groups that were best suited to answer those questions. And the fact that advice and counsel is truly being consultative by the metrics that you see on your screen tells me that we were successful. So, the other piece, of course, is you can see a huge percentage of our cases are COVID cases. And so, while it's an unfortunate number, but we are fortunate to be able to handle them in the way that we're handling them through our case management system. So I'm going to turn it back over to Carol. She's going to spend a few minutes talking about what's next for us, what's in our pipeline, lessons learned, and keys to our success.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. And Jill and Tori have been, as you probably heard through their stories, have been amazing to have along our transformation journey. And every time I always call it about sort of getting sideswiped here and there, right? Here comes COVID, here comes vaccine, here comes cases shooting up, or things that happened that maybe we hadn't thought of around normal HR business in our implementation. So Jill went over some of our initial 11 and a half weeks in, fast facts in there. And so sort of what's next, right? So we went live on November 16th, both in our model and with our technology. And so what are we doing right now? So we sort of group these into phase 2 implementation, and you can see that we've got to get caught up on ServiceNow releases. And so we're doing that now. We went live with Orlando. So anybody on the phone that's on with ServiceNow, right? We're on Orlando, so we got to get to Paris, and then Quebec is quickly following. We do have our own chatbot and have had our own chatbot at the Red Cross for a while. We have a couple of them. One is Clara, that's our blood donor chatbot. So if you ever want to donate, you can interact with Clara around how to donate blood. But Mabel is our internal chatbot. And we started out, oh gosh, it's probably been at least a year and a half ago, I think. And she was first populated with HR questions, simple ones. But she's turning into an intelligent chatbot, and so we are currently integrating our Mabel chatbot with our knowledge base in ServiceNow. So we're really excited, very close to that. That's coming up very shortly, and we're very excited to be able to have that functionality. Something I'll mention is that of our 18,000 employees, about 5,500 or so are phlebotomists that are mobile all the time. So they are, they're out in the field. We have some fixed sites, obviously, where you can go into a donor center, but most of our phlebotomists, 5,500 of them to near 6,000, are on the road in different locations every single day. So we do blood drives 365 days a year. There are no, one computer usually is in, or an iPad, which the whole team at a remote site can use. They're in a blood mobile, or they're at a they're in a church, or they're a community center, or a business sponsors. So the ability to use a mobile device or to live chat on their break or lunch or before or after the blood drive is really important. And so that was something else we were really excited about with the technology. So everything we can continue to do to enable that, I need information, make it quick and easy and very easy for our highly mobile population to do. And I'll say the same thing in disasters, right? So we had a big disaster season. We expect the same thing in the next year. So folks that are out on disaster, we think that this, the technology, the knowledge base, et cetera, is really going to enhance the abilities of employees to get answers for what they need while they're out performing our mission, our mission with the community. We're also going to be creating an alumni portal as well, so our retirees can access that. The performance and analytics module, we have it. We just haven't had a lot of time to invest in that. So that's for our reporting and dashboards. Customer surveys, I have to see if we've launched them yet. I know we were due to launch them. I actually don't know if they've gone out yet, but we're on the cusp of that. We're looking into a bi-directional workday feed so that we can potentially build more forms, front-end forms, versus having some tasks completed in our portal versus having them completed in Workday. So we're taking time to say what makes more sense. How do you combine those two systems to make it sort of seamless and easy for our employees and managers to access? So we're doing a lot of thinking around that piece. And of course, then we're collecting information from both the business, our centers of expertise, ourselves in HR operations to say, how can we enhance what's out there now? I think, the COVID vaccine service was a great enhancement, right? We're rolling out vaccines. A large 10,000 of American Red Cross folks are in the 1A priority group. And so being able to quickly sort of adapt, enhance, and stand that up is a big win for us because we want to make sure we understand the vaccination progress that we're making for our frontline workers there. And then we're continuing, we had a very formal change management plan for our transformation and the technology. We are continuing to do the reinforcement and recognition with that. So we're not forgetting about that. That's something else that we're very much involved with it. Couple things around implementation before we go into sort of what I recap about what I think are the success factors. One thing I'll say, the kind of points to the performance and analytics module that you see there. More time spent before go live and really making sure we were up to speed with basic dashboards and reporting ever since we went live, because the data is there, which is a great thing. Before we had very limited data and insight into HR activity. The data's there, so everybody wants it. And we're just trying to go in stabilization, and we don't have the dashboards really that we need yet, nor all the reporting standardized. So I'd say, that would have been great to spend more time on up front. So that would be great. And then other things that worked really well, though, was Jill had mentioned all the knowledge articles and getting as many as we were loading up till right before, it seems like minutes before go live. The more you can get out there, the more self-service works. So investing time, energy, effort into getting knowledge articles and our business processes documented all along the way makes the configuration of the system much easier, right? If we do the business, we had groups working on documenting our standard operating processes and procedures, which we had none of before we started on this journey, made the system implementation a little bit easier too, because at least we had something to start referring to. And then Sam, if we go to the next slide to kind of wrap it up, is sort of what I saw as our keys to success. And you can sort of see the main themes in there. Really, we always tried to think about, the employee first, employee or manager first, in terms of, what will make it easy for them? What do they want to know, and how can we make it easier for them? What do they need quick access to an HR professional about, and how can we point them to get their quickest, fastest, best, right? We had great business partnership. I will say that one of the successes of our entire transformation effort, so we had a very active executive sponsor, of course, our CHRO. It was involved from the beginning to the end. She was on the every Friday project implementation calls, every single Friday morning for an hour. And I think why that helped, number one, she obviously brought her colleagues along in terms of the executives, was able to answer questions and concerns in the moment, because she knew as much as it was going on as all of us did that were involved in the project. And I think that really, that helped so much. And we could get to her with decisions very quickly. And she had all the context. So I think that's a critical component of success. And then, stay nimble, pivot quickly. I hope by sharing this story, we sort of talked about how COVID is a great example, but there's always other things that are coming up. Oh gosh, we forgot about this, the grievances, those types of things. We had a lot of pushback, I'll tell you, from pulling people out of the field, right? We had all of our biomedical areas, which is where the majority of our unions are. We had people on the ground in every one of those locations. And, we went to an entirely virtual HR model across all tiers. Everyone is 100% virtual. And so I think having a great executive sponsor, but also understanding how we can provide expanded service hours. So we were able to trade. We went virtual, but we were able to expand service hours in terms of our tier 1 and availability. And I think that was a key to success with the business, and convincing them that we can deliver better, faster, with more consistent responses operating in this model. And they wanted more consistency from HR. So that if somebody on the West Coast asked a question and somebody on the East Coast asked a question, and it was the same question, they'd get the same answer. And that didn't always happen previously. So I think we're making a lot of strides there. And then change management. So, we had a very formal and awesome change management team, and don't shortchange that. So that would be sort of a key to success that I would cite. And as I indicated just a couple minutes ago, we're continuing that change management journey and process now, so that we get that reinforcement and are able to address problems quickly. And I'll just say personally, I had an awesome team. So I don't know that everybody can replicate that, but we did do it. Obviously we had Anti as the partner on the technology, but we did not have any consultants. We did it all on our own. As Jill mentioned, we're a nonprofit. We're very, very careful about our donor dollars. And we recruited people, internal HR folks who somehow did their day job and did this too. And so I had an amazing team. So that's our story. I'm sticking to it. And Tracy, I'll turn it. I guess maybe Wayne may come on board, and we're happy to answer questions after that.
That sounds awesome. Oh my gosh, what an amazing story. I mean, it gives me hope for a lot of organizations who, are not heavy on staff, but have a huge need to actually go better, be stronger, and, be faster. So thank you for sharing that. And, thank you, Jill, and thank you, I mean, this is just amazing. So there was a question in the chat, you got to part of it. There's a second part of it that I wanted to see if you could just comment on a little bit more. And that's the socialization of making the team remote. You talked a little bit about how you sort of like illuminated that the hours were going to be more, there's greater consistency. I think those are all great. Is there anything else you did to kind of like talk about how there were positives in that, and to maybe be able to lessen how people might have been like, ooh, I wanted my person, like any other insight in that part of it?
Yeah, well, actually COVID helped us, right? Because most of the organization went virtual because of COVID. So in a way, that really helped the runway of it. It wasn't just in November, all of a sudden people weren't there. The other thing we did was everybody in HR knew several months, knew who was selected, knew that they would be, we wouldn't have a presence in there. So they were able to, and that was done several months in advance. They were able to help their client groups on the ground while they were still in the old model to really talk about benefits. How do we overcome things that don't feel comfortable or great? So because we did that selection process early, we had the benefit of our HR partners who had the trusted relationship on the ground to really be able to bring them along. So that was change management local, in addition to change management big picture. Yeah. So, and I had, the other thing is about several years before, we had put our portion of our business partners virtual that supported our humanitarian business, so that we could point to the areas and say, It hasn't been a train wreck, guys. It works. We've seen it work with your colleagues. If you're concerned, call up your colleague on the humanitarian side. So we kind of had a full court press from all the stakeholders.
I love that. And whenever you have a success like that you can point to, I think that is great. So really all the elements of amazing organizational change management, OCM, to make the process and the project really successful. So I love that. So Wayne, I'm going to actually loop you back in and just talk a little bit more, and maybe Greg wants to join us in terms of, the support of everything that this organization has accomplished, and how I would say faster, agile, pivot, quick, all of those elements that are so important, not just right now with COVID, but frankly, going forward, because we don't know what's going to happen, certainly with COVID, and we're hopeful, but there's still a lot of, golf to be played, if you will. There's still a lot of room to go in terms of what can happen. So I'd love to loop you in terms of, whether you want to talk about the productivity from anywhere, or really unleashing managers, that managerial effectiveness, and putting your employees and your managers first, or just plans to communicate anything that you want to touch on that will kind of further drive this story home for the audience.
Yeah, so I'll start. I mean, the interesting thing about the pandemic was, I'm a Florida guy, so when a hurricane watch happened, it affected Florida. Or if you're in California, you had the fires, so you had relief. We had the rest of the country providing relief for you. But with the thing about COVID that struck me is that everyone was in the same boat, all at the same time. And we were all, for lack of a better word, mid-flight refueling. I mean, we were all figuring it out on our own. It's not like Carol and Greg on my team and you in business school, we learned, okay, if a pandemic happens and suddenly your entire workforce goes and works from home, there was a playbook for that. So we had to figure that out. And the quickest way I found that we figured that out is the clients that realized the team, like I appreciate Carol and her team kept saying the Anti, so people remember that name, but I think it was a little forced. We were just a team. We were all in this together trying to accomplish the same thing. And it's a whole lot easier to be nimble if you look at it that way. So we're all, once we've engaged, the team really is in this situation, it's the American Red Cross, their new employees that they bring on board. So they're trying to bring them on board, the Anti and bringing them in, ServiceNow and their product, and people like you. So that's the key, is to think of us all as a team, not the Anti does this, ServiceNow does this. That helped us being nimble, and just frankly being open and honest. I mean, we were all dealing with the exact same thing, unlike any other. So that's the main thing, just being team first. I think that helps you, and it can help you endure anything. As soon as the silos happen, everything happens slower. And frankly, we didn't have time. Our employees, whether you're American Red Cross head of HR or CEO of the Anti or HR at ServiceNow, our employees expected communication from us, and often, because everyone had the same worries. They were talking to neighbors and friends and spouses. So just being open, honest, and working as a team, I think was the key to us enduring all this.
That transparency element, and just even when organizations don't have exactly all the information, we know for a fact that employees will report that their anxiety goes down, even to get communication that might change or might not be exactly the answer to their question. So I think that's a really, really great point here. One of the things that really caught my eye about the story was when Tori was talking about, kind of using Excel spreadsheets to track and to manage. I have talked to hundreds of organizations in the last probably 8 to 10 months, well, actually going on a year now, around this topic specifically. But the amount of people, if they are still working in Excel, that they have had to pull off of other projects to man Excel is just really difficult. So the quicker organizations can move to a digital underlay and a framework and a foundation that is designed specifically to get information out, the better off it is, and to actually make those investments, because they can go really quickly. And that's one of the things about this story that really struck me, was the agility and the quickness. So anything that you can share, Wayne or Greg, about, how to help organizations just move fast and go quickly.
Yeah. I'll pass that one over to Greg. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, hey Tracy, thanks for the question. And I promise you, I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I see we've got many team members on the call today that were part of the project. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Nick, Mike, Richard, Jill, Ray, and Kim. So thank you guys very much for the last year of work. So Tracy, to your question, I think it roots back to like creating the right team. Like you've heard Carol mention it, you've heard Jill mention it, you've heard Wayne mention it. Like as we started up the project, we did fortunately have an opportunity to get together in person back in February and March. And I feel like we're able to solidify some of those relationships early on. And then coming in with the comment that Carol made about having really strong executive support, it meant that we knew our mission. We knew how to help the American Red Cross. The team was very clear on the goals and objectives. And it quite frankly, it gave us a little bit of extra motivation because of how important the American Red Cross is to just people in general. So we had a special affinity towards them as a customer. So when things, didn't go as expected, i.e. COVID-19 hits in March and we have to readjust our plans, and it made it really easy for that team to come together and say, hey, look, this wasn't planned, it wasn't expected, but we're going to go get this done. And so I felt like the team had really good relationships and a really good rally cry to go deliver on the work that was in front of us.
I love that. That's a great answer. And there's another piece of their story that really, really stuck out for me. And that was, it's not as if they stopped doing a project. Oh, well, we got this piece of it done, so we're done. Or we're going to get this phase of it done, so we're done. It seems like there's this continual focus on improvement, and kind of a path to, to continue to innovate and transform. So either Wayne or Carol or Greg, anyone would just want to take a, little bit more, give a little bit more on that and why it's so important for something like this nature anyway.
Yeah, I'll start, Tracy. I mean, it was interesting just because we dealt with the emergency response request back in that April to June timeframe, but middle of November, all of a sudden there was a new crisis for the American Red Cross related to the vaccinations rollout. And we had a plan that we were going to work on some other things, but the business drove the need. And I think because of the prior work that we had done and the relationships that we've established, I think I got a call from Richard Brown sometime around Wednesday, the 9th. And I think within 3 to 4 days, we had a COVID vaccination service put up into production and ready for use. So it was just a huge testament to the team and being mission focused and getting that done in a quick response kind of way.
And Carol, maybe that's really part of it, is that part of your mission is always looking for ways to do more, deliver more, and serve more. So that really seems like it was just such a hallmark of this project.
It was, and we're kind of used to the disaster response business, but not always in HR directly, right? And so we talk about this past year, we have a saying about, gray skies. That means when there's a disaster, major hurricane or whatever. And so this was HR's gray skies. Yeah. And usually we're behind the scenes helping our frontline folks who are, supporting the disaster relief. And this time it was HR's gray skies. How do we help our employees? How do we deliver all of this? And so I think the continuous mindset, it's funny, if any of my team that's on the call will know, that is our hallmark of our new HR operations group. It has to be continuous improvement. We have to stay a step ahead. We have to see how we can better support our employees, managers, volunteers, whatever, to be able to deliver on the mission. I mean, that's why we're here. And so if we're not always thinking that, how can we make it easier? Then I feel like then we're impacting our mission. So I may not be serving a meal tomorrow, or I may not be drawing blood tomorrow, but if I can tweak something to make it easier for those people who are, that's why we're here.
Exactly. Serving your employees to unleash them to serve the people who need it the most. And thankfully for all of us, who are out there, you're there for us and continue to focus on that mission. So Wayne, I'm going to bring it to you. Is there anything you want to say in closing? We are about 1 minute to the hour. And I want to also say that I would like to give away some iPads, or some AirPods. So let's see. And the winner is, I'm looking for my winner. Looking in chat for my winner, because I don't have the little slips in terms of how we're going to do it. So any winner, let's see. I bet you someone's typing really quickly, right?
I bet they are, Tracy.
Okay, and the winner is, let's see, Joe, let me click this. And the winner is Allison DeTito from Moody's. Yay, Allison, this is so cool. This is really awesome. We're excited for you, and we will coordinate to get those to you. But thank you for joining, everyone. We are really, really appreciative of you for joining and just kind of like thinking about how this could help you as you look at your organization, but very thankful to the Red Cross and so Carol and your team, and then obviously Wayne and your team too. We're so appreciative, and we look forward to gathering together again to share more stories like this. And we hope you enjoy the slides and share them out and talk with us if you have questions. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.